Well, all right. It is 10 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Certainly want to be respectful of your time this morning. And before we get started, I'm just going to turn my camera off so that we won't have any distractions or disruptions. Okay. So as I said, good morning, and I just want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us here today. Just a bit of housekeeping. Want you to know that my lovely wife Ty is helping out, and she'll be able to answer any questions that you have in the chat box. And I just want to take a moment to congratulate all of you for investing in yourself and taking the first steps towards letting go of self-destructive, self-sabotaging behaviors and moving forward into a happier, more fulfilling life. And just in case you don't, go ahead right now and grab a pen and paper so that you can take some notes because during the next 45 minutes we'll be exploring what self-sabotage is, why we partake in it, and how to fight back against and overcome destructive behaviors and form healthier habits instead. And for those of you guys who stick around, if you stick around until the end, we'll give you access to our brand new ultimate guide to create your personal growth plan. Just to say thank you for investing your time with us here today. Also, at the end, we'll tackle any unanswered questions you may have. So be sure to write them in the chat box. And so before we begin, I'd like to just quickly introduce myself to those who may not be familiar with me. My name is Ernest Benjamin, and my wife and I co-founded Gifted Failures United in May of 2020, May of this year. And our mission is ultimately to provide a community that equips and empowers talented, faith based men and women to identify and develop their God given potential, to embrace and utilize their past failures and fears, and really become the best versions of themselves in Christ. And most importantly for me, I am a husband and father. Ty and I have been married now just a little over 11 years, the best 11 years of my life. And we have truly been blessed with two beautiful children, Caleb and Casey. I've been in ministry for over 15 years, serving as an assistant minister, pulpit minister, and now I travel around the country preaching and teaching the gospel, conducting gospel meetings, lectureships, and workshops. I'm also the instructor in the Central Carolina School of Preaching, excuse me, as well as an instructor in the Nashville School of Preaching. And lastly, what I'll say about myself is that I serve as a spiritual leadership coach and trainer with the John Maxwell team, helping to develop better leaders in the home, church, and in the community. But that's enough about me. Let's get down to business. Let's get to the subject at hand, which is self-sabotage. What is self-sabotaging behavior? And so right now, I want you to do me a favor in the chat box. Let me know. Tell me what comes to mind when you think of self-sabotaging behavior. You see, our behaviors or thoughts are said to be self-sabotaging when they hold us back and prevent us from doing what we ideally want to do. Self-sabotaging behaviors create problems and interfere with our long-standing goals and values. The most common self-sabotaging behaviors are procrastination, self-medication with drugs or alcohol, comfort eating, and interpersonal conflict. This would be static within our personal relationships. And while these acts may seem useful and comforting at the moment, they ultimately undermine us, especially when we engage in them repeatedly. And so, even if you are aware of your self sabotaging behaviors, there's no guarantee that that in itself will be enough to prevent you from engaging in those behaviors. Still, though, it is possible to overcome almost any form of self sabotage And the truth of the matter, the good news for us all is that people do it every day. And so let's think about it for a second. Let's think about this question. Are you self-sabotaging? Really think about that. Do you tend to focus on what's not working as opposed to what is? Do you tend to fear the future, worry about the what ifs and what might happen down the road? Do you feel like you have no value and find it challenging to recall accomplishments? Do you criticize yourself often and have trouble accepting accomplishments? Do you consistently compare yourself to others and then feel bad for not measuring up? Do you chase away relationships? And if you are in a relationship, do you quickly find flaws and faults in the other person? Do you feel like you have no purpose in life? And you see, for some of us, these behaviors are very familiar. For others, they might seem to be a bit of a reach. And so let's talk about specific actions and symptoms of self sabotage that are not so obvious, right? And so if you're ready to move forward, here's what I want you to do: type the word symptoms in the chat box as I take a quick drink of water. Okay. And so, under the umbrella of self sabotage is self destruction. Self destructive behaviors can arise all the time and are signs that we are trying to self sabotage. A few examples of such behaviors are having a negative, pessimistic, or self defeating mindset, over or under eating. There's forced incompetence when we portray ourselves as unintelligent or incapable to avoid responsibility. Even bullying, going out of our way to harm others, whether verbally or physically. Other behaviors include drug and alcohol abuse, deliberately alienating yourself from others, refusing help, spending too much money, physical neglect, getting poor sleep, refusing to exercise, eating unhealthy foods, and failing to maintain basic hygiene are all signs of this. There's even mental neglect, refusing, avoiding, or even failing to confront psychological health issues such as anxiety, depression, or OCD. Now, the truth of the matter is, we all go through ups and downs. But if you find yourself constantly returning to patterns of binge drinking, over or under eating, physical neglect, or any of the other behaviors I've mentioned, you likely find comfort in the harmful actions of self sabotage. And there are a few main reasons that we participate in self sabotaging behaviors, but perhaps the most all encompassing reason is a lack of self worth. There are a million little factors that contribute to our feelings of unworthiness, and it will literally take several classes to cover them all. But I believe the concept of cognitive dissonance can help us gain a better understanding. Now, for some of you, you may be asking, what in the world is cognitive dissonance? All right. Cognitive dissonance refers to the tendency that we have to seek consistency among our beliefs and opinions. Every time something doesn't make sense, like when we get hurt, when we're hurt or surprised by an action, we feel discomfort. And our brain compensates by creating a new reality that eliminates the dissonance or discomfort. And so, how does this play out in terms of self-sabotaging behavior? Let's say you don't like someone that you work with, but one day they run out to get a coffee and they ask you, can they grab one for you? Their treat. And so, after experiencing this exchange, you have two options as you move forward. Option one, you can change. You can change your opinion of them and come to the conclusion that maybe they're actually kind of cool. Option two, you can justify. You justify your previous opinion of them, saying to yourself, you know what, I don't trust it. They must be after something or have an agenda. And once you land on one of these options, your brain sticks to it. And so your belief is either altered or strengthened based on what's just happened. And processing new information makes our brains work harder and throws a wrench in the inner workings of everything. And so, therefore, our first instinct is to come to a conclusion and move on, even if that means making a judgment that is not factually correct. And so, here's how cognitive dissonance and self sabotage might play out in someone's romantic life. Let's say in one of your first romantic relationships, you were lied to, causing you to form the belief that romantic feelings are connected with hurt and distrust. And as you progress forward through life and partake in various romantic relationships, you might have never truly gotten over this mistrust. And even if your current partner has never given you any reason not to trust them, you might start thinking to yourself, I've trusted people once, and where did that get me? It only got me hurt. I'm not going to fall for that again. I'm not failing or falling into that trust trap again. And so, like in the previous example, your brain kept selecting option two. I don't trust it. And you see, your brain likes it when you fall back into previous patterns because that's less cognitive work. It would be uncomfortable to learn new information, process it, and then apply that new knowledge to all your memories and beliefs. And so it's easier to fall back into old ideas and prejudices. We like control. And so it feels better to accept your own failure rather than face the possibility of failure taking you by surprise. At least when you're steering the ship, you know where it's going, even if that means driving into an iceberg of self-sabotage. Now let's talk a little bit about the imposter syndrome. You see, the higher up you rise, the further you have to potentially fall. And this fear of ultimately failing is another reason that we partake in self sabotage. When it comes to the imposter syndrome, your psyche is rooted in the perception that you're not deserving of the success you've gained so far. So, in return, you might partake in self sabotaging behaviors like doing the bare minimum, just enough to get by. You might engage in procrastinating or diverting your attention in order to avoid this fear. Other reasons that we might turn to self-sabotaging behaviors are due to familiarity or boredom. Let's just face it, we're creatures of habit. But sometimes this means that we choose consistency over our own happiness or contentment. If we're used to being or feeling overlooked, mistreated, or exploited, it can be strangely reassuring to put ourselves in that position over and over again. And so, even though we know that these roles make us unhappy, we prefer them to the unknown. You see, we might also turn to self sabotage because we're bored. Sometimes creating drama or inciting conflict can give us a rush. And being in the middle of the chaos can feel comforting for some people. But however, the good news is that self sabotage follows a predictable pattern. So we can change it. And so if you're ready for a change, here's what I want you to do: type change in the chat box. Very good, very good. Now, awareness of how self sabotage shows up in your life will help you recognize it so that you can take action to nip it in the bud as soon as possible. And the first step in this is to think back to previous times you self sabotage. Then figure out at what point you typically begin to indulge in self sabotaging behaviors so that you can uncover your triggers. For example, let's think about Joe. Joe had a crush on the barista in his local coffee shop for months. And he always chatted with her every time he'd go in to grab a latte. And then one day she asked him on a date, But Joe completely froze and came up with an excuse to get out of it. Now, the question is, what do you think happened? You see, somewhere in that exchange, Joe was triggered. Perhaps as soon as his romantic interest began showing interest back, his brain didn't understand how to comprehend that new information. And you see, this takes us back to cognitive dissonance. If your reality up until now dictates that you aren't worthy of love, but suddenly you receive information that contradicts that reality, your brain sends signals to fight against the cognitive dissonance or the discomfort of the new and unknown, which brings you back to familiar thoughts and patterns. Perhaps this means that now you detach and become uninterested. You're suddenly afraid that your relationship is moving forward and could possibly fail. You see, what I want you to do is to think of self sabotage as a misdirected form of self love. Your brain is moving you towards self sabotaging behaviors because it thinks that it's protecting you from hurt and danger, when in reality, it's holding you back from your full potential. You see, fear is an emotion that most of us prefer to sweep under the rug instead of working to confront head on. And so, one step you can take to face your inner fears head on is to journal. And so the next time you realize that you might be partaking in a self-sabotaging behavior, be it procrastinating, overeating, or even picking fights with your loved ones, take a moment. Take a moment to ask yourself, what am I scared of? And then take it a step further and then ask yourself, why is this so scary to me? And then from there, ask yourself, if the worst case scenario happened, could I handle it? And then finally ask yourself, does this fear, does this fear outweigh my desires? Does it outweigh my desired outcome? And you see, once you've taken these steps and actually taken time to consider and dissect the situation head on, the fear inside of you loses a little bit of power over your psyche. And I would suggest that you repeat this activity as needed in order to train your brain to ease out of old thought patterns slowly. And once you get intimate with your fears, we suggest that you recommit to new, healthy goals every day. You see, setting small goals will make you feel more accomplished and more in control of your life. And this is particularly helpful when it comes to combating self sabotaging actions because it fights feelings of low self worth and it really keeps you motivated and moving forward in a positive direction. So start with small obligations, doing laundry, grocery shopping, or even picking up the dry cleaning. Crossing something off of your to-do list is fulfilling in its own kind of weird way. And as you're setting these new and healthy goals, one goal we strongly suggest that you set is to stop assuming things. Don't fall into the mental trap of harmful assumptions because it's easy to spiral out of control. You see, it's natural to try to analyze and assess people and situations just to make sense of our surroundings. But the danger lies in allowing your imagination to wander too far, leading to the worst case scenario, which causes anxiety, frustration, and fear. And furthermore, the assumptions you make about the way people feel about you are often reflections of how you feel about yourself. After all, you are getting that harmful material from somewhere, and most likely your own sabotaging thoughts are the source of those beliefs. And so, if you're feeling ignored or alone or abused, And your first thought is, they treat me this way because of XYZ, or they must think that I'm this or that. What you're actually doing is projecting your own feelings about yourself. And so if this behavior goes unchecked and you don't realize that you're making silly assumptions, you will actually trick your mind into making false judgments about other people. And so when you start assuming negative things, you start to attract negative thoughts. And so to fix this problem, to fix this pattern, try and catch yourself doing this and then replace the negative assumption with a more favorable and positive one. And another thing that we suggest that you do is that you keep your days simple and meaningful. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed with things that aren't a priority to you, and don't waste your time on things that don't really matter. Learn how to say no, and start getting used to delegating duties to people around you. Take time for yourself to do the things that you enjoy. And so if you enjoy cooking, make sure you set some time aside to make yourself a nice meal a couple times a week. If reading is what you enjoy, carve out some time for you to enjoy your favorite book this weekend. You see, doing the things that you're passionate about will keep your stress levels down and really allow you to focus more on your own goals and motivations. You also want to get an accountability partner. Surround yourself with people who are also doing their best to fight against habits of self sabotage. If your goal is to start creating more healthy habits, but most of your friends don't have a problem sitting around every night eating takeout, find a buddy to go to the gym with. And see, then if and when you do find yourself slipping back into unhealthy habits of the past, you'll have someone that you can go to for help and inspiration instead of falling backward or backsliding. And so type accountability. If you guys are ready to hold yourselves accountable, more accountable, type accountability in the chat box. Another way to solve this problem as we continue is to accept more love into your life, which of course can be difficult if you feel that you're unworthy of love. But remember that if you're always putting yourself into destructive, self sabotaging situations, you are not allowing yourself to expand your worth and reach your full potential. And since you can't control the love you receive from other people, the best place to start is with self love. And so here's a few ways that you can practice self love. Buy yourself some flowers. Sing loudly to your favorite music or your favorite song. Spend some time working in your yard or garden. Treat yourself to a concert, a play, visit the art museum, or treat yourself to a musical performance. Join a walking group or sign up for a class. You may even want to write down some of your favorite scriptures, quotes, or mantras and post them around your home and your workspace. Plan a get together with your friends. You may even want to make some art or create a do it yourself project. And one of the best ways that we can practice self care and break up with self sabotage is to take care of our physical body. You see, if you're constantly tired, try reaching or researching some natural sleeping supplements. If you're feeling burnt out, pass on that Red Bull. You may want to cut out the caffeine after 3 o'clock. If you're overweight, reassess your diet and physical activity level. If you have chronic pain, look into possible remedies like yoga, acupuncture, or even some dietary changes. You see, if we ignore our aches and pains, we're not putting ourselves first and we're not showing our bodies the self respect that they deserve. And then here's what I want you to do. I want you to focus on the positives. I want to say that again. Focus on the positives. You see, shifting years of negative self talk to positive self talk is a lot easier said than done. It requires you to reprogram your entire mind. But I want you to understand that you can do it. You see, even if you think that you're not that critical of yourself, you might be surprised because most of the time we're unaware of the unconscious dialogue that goes on in our minds. And so here's some tricks that you can use to boost your positive self-thought. First and foremost, practice positive affirmations. Such things as I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Or you might practice saying, if God be for me, who can be against me? Or perhaps God loves me, therefore I am worthy of love. All of these are excellent places to start. And what you want to do is repeat these phrases to yourself when you sense yourself spiraling. Another thing that we can do to focus on the positives is to think of our failures as new opportunities. Sometimes things that seem negative at the onset can actually lead to really awesome things. And another thing that we can do to focus on the positive is to avoid negative people. I like to think of it as avoiding those energy vampires. And so if your cubicle neighbor is always complaining, bring in a pair of headphones and listen to some podcasts instead. If you have a friend who's always sees the glass half empty, try spending more time with people who are willing to join you on your journey to a more positive outlook on life. And then lastly, look at the big picture. Try not to waste precious mental power on things that are out of your control and that really won't matter at all in the long run. And so, as promised, Uh, we want to thank you guys for sticking around until the end. And as we promised, for sticking around to the end, you get access to our new workbook, the ultimate guide to create your personal growth plan, which will help you jumpstart your new life and creating the life that you want to live and become the better version, the best version of yourself. So just visit the link listed at giftedfailuresunited.com/growth plan and download your free copy. And I just, as we close out, want to leave you with one final thought. And I really want you to hear this. I want to encourage you to make a conscious effort to be resilient, to move forward with your life no matter what hurdles come your way. I want you to understand that you are strong, you are intelligent, and you're capable of overcoming the negative thought patterns that your mind has gotten into the habit of building. You can do it. And so we thank you again. And if you have any other questions for us, please send us an email at hello@giftedfailuresunited.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube at Gifted Failures United. And remember, failure provides feedback that is absolutely essential for success. So until we meet again, embrace the gift of failure. God bless you.